The night sky blanketed the Hollywood Hills in a deep, impenetrable blackness. A gust of wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it an unsettling stillness. At the top of the hill stood Hollywood Icon's mansion, a masterpiece of glass and steel that seemed to hover above the city lights below. It wasn't just a house, it was a fortress, daring anyone to breach its defenses. In the shadows just outside the sprawling property, three figures crouched low. Vince, the leader, whispered, "This is it. This place could set us up for life." His voice betrayed none of the nerves churning inside him. Carla, with her sleek black tablet in hand, barely glanced at him. Her fingers danced across the screen, unlocking layer after layer of digital protection. Marco, towering and tense, gripped his crowbar tightly, his eyes darting down the darkened street. "Vince, you sure about this?" Carla hissed, the glow of her tablet lighting her face. "This isn't just some rich guy's house. Everything about this screams trouble." Vince smirked, his confidence unshaken. "That's what makes it perfect. A guy like Hollywood Icon, he's got millions just lying around. We get in, get out, and nobody even knows we were here." The gate clicked open with a soft hum. Carla sighed and stashed her tablet. "Your funeral," she muttered. As they slipped through the gate and crept toward the mansion, a faint unease crept over the group. The silence was too perfect, too complete. It felt as if the house was watching them, waiting. "Let's move," Vince ordered. But as they crossed the threshold, the mansion seemed to breathe, and something shifted. The trio moved with practiced precision through the perfectly manicured landscaping of Hollywood Icon's mansion. The moonlight glinted off the glass walls, casting eerie reflections that seemed to track their every step. Vince led the way, his duffel bag swinging at his side, filled with tools for the job. Carla followed close behind, her tablet glowing faintly as she monitored the security systems. Marco brought up the rear, his muscles taut as he scanned the property for any signs of movement. "This place is insane," Marco muttered under his breath, his eyes lingering on the sleek architecture and the faint glow of artwork visible through the windows. "Who needs this much space?" Vince snorted. "Guys like him don't even notice what they've got. That's why we're here." Carla glanced at Vince, but kept her focus on the tablet. "Careful, this isn't your average security setup. Whoever designed this knew what they were doing." The mansion loomed larger as they approached, its glass surfaces reflecting the surrounding darkness. Inside, sculptures, paintings, and rare artifacts were arranged in a gallery-like setting. Vince paused, his breath catching, as he spotted a gold-plated figurine through one of the windows. "That's got to be worth a fortune," he whispered. Carla rolled her eyes. "Focus, Vince. We're not here to admire his taste in art." They reached the side entrance. Carla crouched beside the electronic lock, her fingers flying over her tablet. "This is military-grade encryption," she muttered. "Give me a second." Marco shifted uneasily, his grip tightening on the crowbar. "This feels wrong," he said, his voice low. "You're just paranoid," Vince replied sharply. "We've done this 100 times. Stick to the plan." With a quiet beep, the lock disengaged. Carla stood, a satisfied smirk on her face. "We're in." The door opened into a cavernous living room, the air cool and scented faintly of cedar. The trio stepped inside, their footsteps muffled on the plush carpet. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a stunning view of the city below, but none of them were paying attention. Their eyes were on the treasures scattered throughout the room, priceless artifacts displayed as though they were nothing more than decorations. "This guy's living the dream," Marco murmured, his awe breaking through his usual stoic demeanor. "Yeah, well, dreams can end pretty fast," Vince said, stuffing the gold figurine into his bag. "Wait," Carla hissed, grabbing his arm. "Doesn't this feel off? No guards, no cameras, no dogs. It's like we're walking into a trap." Vince shrugged off her hand. "You worry too much. Just do your job." Reluctantly, Carla returned to her tablet, bypassing another layer of security as they moved deeper into the house. But the uneasy silence grew heavier, wrapping around them like a suffocating blanket. They reached the main hallway when it happened. The lights flickered. The sound of the doors slamming shut echoed like a gunshot. A low hum filled the air, followed by a voice, mechanical, calm, and chilling. "Welcome, intruders. Your presence has been noted. Escape is no longer an option. Carla froze, her hands trembling over her tablet. What the hell is this? Vince turned in a slow circle, his confidence finally cracking. Someone's messing with us. More like someone was expecting us, Marco muttered, his knuckles white around the crowbar. The room was suddenly bathed in a crimson glow, the light casting distorted shadows on the walls. A deep laugh echoed through the house, sending a shiver down their spines. This isn't just a house, Carla whispered, her voice barely audible. It's a trap. The crimson light deepened, painting the walls with an ominous hue. The trio stood frozen, their breath shallow as the mechanical voice resonated once more. You entered uninvited, seeking what isn't yours. Now you'll find far more than you bargained for. Vince snapped out of his stupor first, spinning toward Carla. Shut this thing down, now. I'm trying, Carla stammered, her fingers moving frantically over the tablet. The screen flashed with error messages. Whoever built this system is light years ahead of me. I can't break in. Marco gritted his teeth, gripping the crowbar like a lifeline. We need to get out of here. There's got to be another way out. The voice interrupted, calm and unwavering. Escape? Number redemption? Perhaps. Each of you will face a trial, fail, and you will remain here, a monument to your choices. What is this? Some kind of sick game? Vince shouted, his voice cracking under the weight of his growing fear. The house responded with an unsettling stillness. Then with a sudden lurch, the floor beneath them began to shift. Panels slid and retracted, breaking apart the once spacious room into a series of twisting corridors. Walls rose around them, separating the group despite their desperate shouts to stay together. Vince! Carla screamed as she lost sight of him. Marco! Vince's voice echoed back, tinged with panic. Within moments, silence consumed them, broken only by the mechanical hum of the shifting walls. Each thief now stood alone, trapped in their own isolated chamber. The air was thick and suffocating in Vince's confined space. The walls shimmered faintly before erupting into a haunting spectacle. Holographic faces appeared, each one staring at him with anger and betrayal. Men, women, even children, people he recognized from his past. No, Vince muttered, backing away as the faces advanced. This isn't real. This can't be real. A voice colder than before spoke directly to him. Vincent Parker, career thief, betrayer, deceiver. Do you recognize them? These are the lives you've destroyed for your own gain. I didn't destroy anyone, Vince shouted, though his trembling hands betrayed his bravado. I did what I had to do to survive. The voice chuckled softly. Survival? Is that what you call it? Betraying your closest allies? Stealing from those who trusted you? One figure stepped forward, her image sharper than the others. Claire, his former partner, stared at him with tears streaming down her face. Why, Vince? She asked, her voice trembling. Why did you sell me out? Vince's breath hitched. He tried to look away, but her gaze held him captive. I had no choice, he whispered. You always had a choice, Claire replied. And you chose yourself. Every single time. The walls closed in tighter, forcing Vince to confront the faces of his past. Their voices blended into a cacophony of accusations, drowning him in guilt. Carla's room was stark white, its walls lined with mirrors that reflected her from every angle. She took a cautious step forward, her reflection multiplying endlessly around her. At first she thought it was just a trick, but then the mirrors began to ripple, like water disturbed by a stone. The reflections changed, no longer showing her present self, but glimpses of her past. One mirror displayed her hacking into a hospital's database, stealing sensitive information and selling it to the highest bidder. Another showed a young man being dragged away in handcuffs, a rival hacker she had framed to save herself. Carla clenched her fists, her voice shaking. I did what I had to do. It wasn't personal. The voice now directed at her cut through the silence. Carla Duca, brilliant, ruthless, selfish. You told yourself it was just business, but you knew the damage you caused. Families ruined, lives destroyed, and all for your own gain. A final mirror rippled to life, revealing a young girl clutching a tattered teddy bear. Carla recognized her instantly, the daughter of a businessman whose life she had upended. "Why did you hurt my daddy?" the girl asked, her voice soft but piercing. Carla staggered back, tears welling in her eyes. "I didn't mean to. I didn't think." "Didn't think," the voice echoed. "Or didn't care." The room was dimly lit, the only source of illumination a single bulb swinging from the ceiling. In the center hung a punching bag, swaying gently as though it had just been struck. Marco approached cautiously, his instincts screaming at him to stay alert. As he reached out to touch the bag, it split open, spilling hundreds of photographs onto the floor. Marco knelt, picking up one of the pictures. His heart clenched as he recognized the smiling face of his daughter, Isabella, holding a trophy. Marco Torres, the enforcer, the protector. "Or so you like to think," the voice began, its tone biting. "Tell me, Marco, who have you protected? Your family? The ones you left behind?" Images flashed on the walls, each one showing moments Marco had abandoned. His sister crying as he left their childhood home. His girlfriend begging him to stay for their daughter. His daughter's milestones, birthdays, recitals, victories, all moments he had missed. Marco's fists clenched, his breath coming in heavy gas. "I thought I was doing what was best for them," he muttered. "You thought," the voice sneered. "But did you ever ask what they needed? Or was it easier to run?" As each thief struggled with their trials, the mansion seemed to grow quieter, its mechanical hum fading to a low, menacing vibration. In the control room, Nathan Gray, the mastermind behind it all, watched their torment with an impassive gaze. His fingers tapped rhythmically on the console as he whispered, "Let's see what you're really made of." Vince stood frozen in the center of his chamber, his breathing ragged. The holographic faces swirled around him, each one accusing him, each one demanding answers. He clenched his fists, shouting over the cacophony, "I did what I had to do. You don't know what it's like out there." One face stepped forward, clearer than the rest. Claire, her features a mix of anger and sorrow, stared at him. "I trusted you, Vince. We were partners. Why did you sell me out?" His voice faltered. "It was either you or me. They would have come after me if I didn't." Claire's hologram shook her head, her voice trembling with pain. "You always had a choice, Vince. You just chose yourself. Every single time." As she spoke, other holograms joined in. A young couple, their savings wiped out by one of Vince's scams. A man clutching a crumpled contract, his life destroyed by Vince's betrayal. Each accusation hit like a punch to the gut. "I didn't mean for things to get that bad," Vince shouted. "I didn't know." The voice of Echelon interrupted, calm but cutting. "Didn't know or didn't care. You always chose the easy way out, Vincent. You've left a trail of destruction, and now it's time to face it." The walls shimmered, closing in on him. Vince sank to his knees, clutching his head as the faces loomed closer. Their voices grew louder, merging into a deafening roar. Finally, everything went silent. Vince looked up, tears streaming down his face. One face remained, Claire's. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't know how to stop." Her image faded, leaving Vince alone in the dark, the weight of his guilt pressing down on him. Carla's trembling fingers hovered over her tablet, but it was useless. The mirrors around her continued to ripple, each one showing another fragment of her past. The hospital administrator whose system she hacked appeared in one mirror, his face pale as he murmured, "We'll lose everything. The lawsuits, the fines. We can't recover." Another mirror showed a young man being shoved into a police car, shouting, "I didn't do this! You have to believe me!" Carla knew the evidence she planted had sealed his fate. "Stop it!" she screamed at the mirrors. "I didn't mean for them to get hurt." The voice of Echelon responded, calm and unrelenting. "Didn't mean for them to get hurt, or didn't care as long as you benefited? You pride yourself on being untouchable, Carla, but even you leave a trail." The final mirror showed the little girl clutching her teddy bear, her eyes wide with fear. Carla's breath caught in her throat. "Why did you hurt my daddy?" the girl asked, her voice soft but piercing. Carla stumbled back, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't mean to hurt him. I needed to survive." "Survival," Echelon's voice echoed. "The lie you tell yourself. You didn't act out of need. You acted out of greed. The mirrors returned to their original state, reflecting Carla's pale, tear-streaked face. For the first time, she saw herself clearly. Not the brilliant hacker, but the person who had left destruction in her wake. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't know. I didn't think." The silence was deafening as the room shifted, opening a path forward. Marco sat on the cold floor of his chamber, photographs scattered around him. Each image was a reminder of what he had left behind. His daughter, Isabella, smiling up at him from a birthday party he never attended. His sister, Sophia, crying as he walked away from their family. Echelon's voice filled the room, calm and deliberate. Marco Torres, the enforcer, the protector. At least that's what you tell yourself. But who have you really protected? Marco clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. "I did what I had to do. I had to make money. I had to." "To what?" Echelon interrupted. "Run? Abandon? Leave the people who needed you the most?" The photographs shimmered, transforming into moving images. Marco's girlfriend, Elena, begging him not to leave. His daughter crying as she watched him walk away. I thought they'd be better off without me," Marco said, his voice barely a whisper. "Better off without you?" Echelon repeated. "Or easier for you to walk away?" The punching bag in the center of the room split open, spilling a final photograph. Marco picked it up, his hands trembling. It was Isabella, now older, holding a trophy. Her smile was radiant, but Marco wasn't in the picture. "I missed everything," he murmured, his voice cracking. "Strength isn't about muscles, Marco," Echelon said. "It's about staying when it's hard, showing up when it matters. Can you face what you've left behind?" Marco closed his eyes, the weight of his choices pressing down on him. "I have to try," he whispered. The room shifted, opening a door. Marco rose, unsteady but resolute, and stepped forward. Far beneath the chaos unfolding in the mansion, Nathan Gray sat in his concealed control room. His sharp eyes scanned the monitors in front of him, each displaying live feeds of Vince, Carla, and Marco struggling through their trials. Nathan leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled under his chin. The hum of advanced technology filled the room, a stark contrast to the heavy silence in his mind. This wasn't just about the thieves. This was about him. Years ago, Nathan Gray had been one of the CIA's finest operatives, a master of psychological warfare and interrogation. He could break a person with a word, dismantle a criminal network with a single plan. His mind was his greatest weapon, but brilliance came at a cost. One mission had changed everything. Nathan had been tasked with dismantling a global human trafficking ring, a mission that required months of undercover work and carefully constructed plans. He was close to success when betrayal struck. Someone inside the agency leaked his identity to the very people he was hunting. Nathan survived the fallout, but his family did not. His wife, Sophia, and their young son, Daniel, were targeted in a calculated act of vengeance. They were killed in their own home, a message meant for Nathan. The loss shattered him. For years, Nathan spiraled into isolation, consumed by grief and guilt. He had failed to protect the people who mattered most. It was during this dark period that he met Hollywood icon at a veterans charity event. The actor, known for his quiet generosity, recognized the pain in Nathan's eyes and offered him a lifeline, a place to retreat and heal. The mansion became Nathan's sanctuary, but healing never came. Instead, his grief transformed into something darker. He saw the world for what it truly was, a place filled with liars, thieves, and manipulators. Everywhere he looked, he saw people who thought they were untouchable. Nathan couldn't save his family, but he could make people face the truth. He began designing the mansion's security system, but it was never meant to be a traditional defense. It was a crucible, a place where people like Vince, Carla, and Marco would confront their darkest selves. It wasn't about punishment, Nathan told himself. It was about redemption. But as he watched the thieves on the screens, a flicker of doubt crept into his mind. Was he really helping them? Or was he projecting his own pain onto them, using the mansion as a stage to relive his unresolved grief? Nathan's gaze fell on a worn photograph on his desk. It was a picture of Sophia and Daniel, smiling on a sunlit day that felt like a lifetime ago. He ran his thumb over the creased edges, his jaw tightening. "This has to mean something," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "If they can change, then maybe—" His thoughts were interrupted by a new alert flashing on one of the monitors. Vince had reached the end of his trial. The man knelt on the floor of his chamber, his face streaked with tears. Carla's chamber showed her sitting in stunned silence, her tablet discarded at her side. Marco, in his room, clutched a photograph of his daughter, his head bowed. Nathan leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Let's see what you're made of," he whispered. Despite his doubts, Nathan believed in his system. People only change when they were forced to confront the truth. And tonight, 3 lives hung in the balance. The crimson glow faded as walls shifted and doors opened. One by one, Vince, Carla, and Marco emerged from their chambers, each bearing the weight of their personal trials. They staggered forward into a circular room, its walls lined with monitors displaying fragments of their ordeals. Holograms of betrayed faces, shattered lives, and missed moments flickered like ghosts around them. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, a single red button glowing ominously. The calm, mechanical voice of Echelon broke the silence. "You have faced your truths. Now you stand at the crossroads. One choice lies ahead." Vince glanced at Carla and Marco, their faces pale and drawn. His usual bravado was gone, replaced by quiet exhaustion. "What's the catch?" he asked, his voice low. "No catch," Echelon replied. "Press the button, and the doors will open. You may leave, returning to the lives you led before, unchanged, unchallenged. But know this, leaving without action means the cycle will continue. The damage you cause will grow, and the consequences will only deepen." Carla folded her arms, her voice sharp. "And what if we don't press it? What happens then?" Echelon's tone softened. "If you choose not to press the button, you choose accountability. You choose to face the consequences of your actions, to make amends, and to seek redemption. The path will not be easy. The world outside is unforgiving, but it is the only way to break free, not from this house, but from yourselves." The 3 thieves exchanged uneasy glances. Marco spoke first, his voice heavy with emotion. "So, we just admit everything? Fix what we've broken? What if it's too late?" "It is never too late," Echelon answered, "but the choice must be yours." The room fell silent as the 3 stood before the pedestal, the glowing button casting a faint red light on their faces. Vince took a deep breath. "I've spent my whole life running from the messes I've made. Every time things got hard, I found a way out. I thought I was smart, thought I could outplay everyone, but all I did was leave destruction behind me." He looked at the button, his hand twitching. "If I press this, nothing changes. I go back to the same life, the same lies. I can't keep running." Carla's gaze flicked between the button and the monitors. The faces of her victims stared back at her, a constant reminder of the lives she had destroyed. "I always told myself it was just business, that I was smarter than everyone else, so it didn't matter what I did. But it mattered to them. It mattered to that little girl who lost her father, to the man I framed." Her voice broke. "I don't know if I can fix it, but I have to try." Marco was the last to speak. He held a photograph of Isabella, his hands trembling. "I've been running my whole life. I thought my family was better off without me, that I'd just mess things up if I stayed. But now I see, I was the one who let them down." His jaw tightened as he looked at Vince and Carla. "No more running, no more excuses." Together they stepped back from the pedestal, leaving the button untouched. The monitors went dark, and Echelon's voice returned, filled with a faint hint of satisfaction. "You have made your choice. The doors will open, and you will be free to leave. What you do with that freedom is up to you. But remember, redemption is a path, not a destination. The hardest work begins now." A low hum filled the room as a door opened, revealing the mansion's grand entrance. The 3 walked toward it, their steps slow and deliberate. None of them spoke, but the weight of their decisions hung heavy in the air. They emerged into the cool night, the stars above seeming brighter than before. Vince exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "Well, that was something." Carla looked down at her tablet, her fingers hovering over the screen. I know what I need to do. I can use what I've done to stop people like us. Marco nodded, clutching the photograph of Isabella. I need to see my daughter. Even if she hates me, she deserves to know the truth. Vince gave them a small smile. Good luck. We're going to need it. Without another word, they parted ways, each heading toward an uncertain future. Inside the mansion, Nathan Gray watched their retreating figures on his monitors. His expression was unreadable, his mind a storm of conflicting emotions. He had given them the tools to change, but whether they succeeded was out of his hands. This is only the beginning, he whispered. The mansion's lights dimmed and its walls shifted once more. Vince stood outside a plain, unremarkable office building in downtown Los Angeles. The sign above the door read, Victims Restitution Program. His palms were sweaty and his heart raced as he stared at the door. For years, Vince had thrived in the shadows, conning people, making easy money, and leaving chaos in his wake. Now he was about to step into the light, a place he hadn't ventured in years. He clutched a folder of paperwork in his hands, his fingers trembling. Inside were records of the people he had wronged, the ones he had tracked down in the weeks after leaving the mansion. Apologies, repayment plans, and restitution offers filled the pages. Some had slammed the door in his face, refusing to listen. Others had reluctantly accepted his words, their skepticism clear. Vince took a deep breath and walked through the door. A counselor greeted him with a kind but cautious smile. You must be Mr. Parker. Come on in. The meeting was long and grueling. The counselor went through every name, every story, and every plan Vince had written. He had to explain himself over and over, why he had done what he did and why he wanted to make things right. It won't be easy, the counselor said at the end. Some people won't forgive you. Some won't believe you've changed. But if you're serious about this, we'll help you. For the first time in years, Vince felt something unfamiliar. Hope. He knew he couldn't erase his past, but maybe, just maybe, he could build a future he could live with. Carla sat at a cramped desk in a tiny office, her fingers flying over a keyboard as she analyzed a phishing attack targeting a local nonprofit. The job didn't pay much, but it was the first honest work she had done in years. After leaving the mansion, Carla spent countless sleepless nights reflecting on the faces she had seen during her trial. The victims of her crimes haunted her, their voices echoing in her mind. She had tried to reach out to some of them, sending anonymous emails to apologize. Most never responded, but one message came back, from Eric, the hacker she had framed years ago. His email was short. I don't know if I can forgive you, but I appreciate that you tried. Maybe we can both move forward now. Those words changed everything. Carla knew she couldn't undo the damage she had caused, but she could use her skills to protect others from people like her. She applied to dozens of cybersecurity firms, facing rejection after rejection. Most companies didn't want to take a chance on someone with her history. Finally, a retired ethical hacker gave her a shot. I believe in second chances, he had said during the interview, but you've got to earn it. Now, Carla spent her days protecting vulnerable organizations from cyber attacks. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. And for the first time, she felt at peace. Marco's rusted pickup truck rumbled to a stop in front of a modest suburban house. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white. For days, he had worked up the courage to drive here. Now that he was finally parked outside, he wasn't sure if he could get out of the truck. A photograph of his daughter, Isabella, was taped to the dashboard. She was 10 years old now, smiling brightly as she held a soccer trophy. Marco had missed so much of her life, birthdays, school plays, and countless moments he could never get back. Gathering his courage, he stepped out of the truck and walked up the driveway. His heart pounded as he knocked on the door. Moments later, Elena, his ex-girlfriend, opened it. Her eyes widened in shock. Marco, she said, her voice wary, what are you doing here? I came to see Isabella, Marco said, his voice trembling. I know I don't deserve a second chance, but I want to try. I want to be her dad again. Elena studied him for a long moment before stepping aside. She's in the backyard. But if you mess this up, Marco... I won't, he promised. Marco stepped into the backyard and saw Isabella sitting on a swing, her dark hair shining in the afternoon sun. She looked up as he approached, her eyes curious but cautious. "Hi, Isabella," Marco said softly. "I'm your dad." For a moment she said nothing. Then to his surprise, she smiled. "I know." Marco felt tears well in his eyes as he sat down beside her. It was a small start, but it was a start. Deep within the now silent mansion, Nathan Gray sat in his control room, watching the monitors. The screens no longer displayed Vince, Carla, or Marco. Their paths were their own now, and Nathan had no intention of interfering. Yet their stories lingered in his mind, leaving him with a mixture of satisfaction and doubt. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on a photograph sitting on the desk. Sophia and Daniel, his wife and son. Their smiles seemed to mock him, reminding him of everything he had lost.